to meet different people.
I can do whatever I want.
This is a scene from The Boys Season 2 finale. It's of one of the main characters, Homelander, to put it delicately, relieving himself over the city. And what's interesting about this scene, aside from what's happening in it, is that it was meant to be in the first season, but Amazon rejected it because they thought it went too far. As showrunner Eric Kripke explained in a Reddit AMA, there was one scene that Amazon said, "Fuck no, you have to cut." Amazon seemed to think it wasn't necessary. So then, why are you seeing it now? There it is, right there. He's doing it. And the simple answer is...
money!
But the more interesting answer deals with why we are able to see it at all. Because no matter how well received or how much money it made, if The Boys was on a TV channel such as Comedy Central, this scene would never see the light of day. And it's this instance that made me want to take a look at how we consume shows today, and how TV and streaming have influenced each other over the years, particularly when thinking about the limitations on what we can see. First, we need to do a quick recap on the world of TV, which can be really interesting and complicated and a little backwards. What you need to know first is that TV channels are broken up into two main sections. There's broadcast television, which includes the big national networks such as NBC, ABC, and CBS. Then there's cable and satellite TV, which includes just about everything else, such as AMC, truTV, Comedy Central, Sci-Fi, etc. And this also includes premium channels, and these include your HBO, Showtime, Starz, and more. Now, the Federal Communications Commission, commonly known as the FCC, has rules and regulations for television. The FCC are often referred to as the censorship organization, and many people think that they have strict control over what we see on television. But this actually isn't true. In fact, the FCC has next to no control or influence over most of what you see. There are a lot of nuances and information the FCC provides, so I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. Basically, the FCC has the most control over broadcast networks. These are the big networks that I mentioned: NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox. And these networks are broadcast through public airways, meaning anyone can theoretically get them if they have an antenna. Because of this, the FCC says that since these channels are unavoidable, they can be regulated. There are three main categories they regulate: obscene, indecent, and profane content. Now, indecent and profane content are protected by the First Amendment, meaning they cannot be censored. However, since these broadcast networks are unavoidable if you have any type of TV setup, the government decided that these two types of content are prohibited, specifically between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Because, as they say, there is a reasonable risk that children may be in the audience. Which means, technically, if these networks wanted to, between the hours of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., they can air Game of Thrones levels of programming. And guess what? All the other paid-for cable channels don't have these restrictions at all, which means they can air whatever their heart desires at any time during the day.
There's no rules!
The only restriction they have is on obscene content, since that is not protected by the First Amendment, meaning everybody has to abide by this.
There's one rule!
But given what you know is on HBO, should give you an idea of how far you would have to go to get in trouble for this. So then why don't they put out more unfiltered graphic content? Why do all these channels seem to be living under the watchful eye of a strict parent? Why is HBO putting out unfiltered content and all those other cable channels are restricting themselves?
Money!
Yeah, of course it's money. It's always money. Specifically, advertisers. It may seem normal now, but when HBO first came around, they were the only ones rolling without ads. They make their money off of subscriptions. They were basically the first version of a streaming service. Advertisers have a huge influence on what content channels produce. They want advertiser-friendly shows that are in line with their products and company's image. But these premium cable subscription services, as well as the now more common online streaming services, don't have advertisers to worry about. Hence, they have the freedom to make the type of content they want. It's the same reason why YouTube has gotten so strict with monetization rules. Which is ironic, given that YouTube got popular enough for advertisers to come to the website due to the unfiltered content creators provided for them. And now it's the same thing that's holding advertisers back. So that's a summary of one of the influences on television shows. And you might be saying to yourself, well, you just said the FCC doesn't actually censor networks, and neither do the advertisers themselves, they just influence it. So what gives? Well, it all fuels and leads to the biggest and sometimes most egregious factor to affect TV shows, studio interference. A phrase you have probably heard too many times to count. Whether it be for television or movies, it is something that is constantly a problem for creators. And the problem here goes beyond censoring curse words and violence to please advertisers, and into something that I can only think to describe as narcissism. For example, Community, an NBC sitcom, has an episode centered around the game Dungeons & Dragons. However, at the time of making the episode, Sony, the studio behind the show, did not want creator Dan Harmon to make this episode. The only reason the episode was made is because Dan Harmon turned in the script late and there wasn't enough time to make a change.
I mean, we wrote it till 11 a.m. We stayed up all night, brought it in time for the table read, read it, and because Game of Thrones wasn't on the air yet, Sony had to have a special meeting and said, there's a lot of gobbling in this script. And one of them said, we wish you had turned this in on time so we could have thrown it in the garbage.
And that episode went on to become one of the highest rated and most loved episodes of the series. And as Dan Harmon perfectly puts it,
Had you been more professional, you could have made worse TV.
and this is often the case, where a studio that is uninvolved and really doesn't know better butts in and interferes with the people they hired to make their shows in the first place. I really don't understand why these studios feel they need to make changes based on nothing but their personal feelings. And this brings us back to the scene from The Boys. A scene initially cut by Amazon, but then brought back for season 2. This is becoming a much rarer occurrence, but not the part where Amazon Studios changed their minds about the scene, but instead about Amazon Studios interfering in the first place. Because interference isn't something we regularly see with streaming services. As I said before, because most of these services don't have advertisers, they feel a lot more comfortable letting the people they hire do what they want. Eric Kripke went on to explain in his Reddit AMA that this scene was the only thing Amazon fought him on. And in season 2, Amazon realized and asked themselves, why are we restricting this at all? This show, which has been a hit amongst fans and critics, is already full of graphic and insane moments. So why are we drawing the line here? And this is what I love about streaming services. The original shows and movies that are giving us stories and showing us things we have never been able to get before on television. A lot of people say they switch to streaming services for convenience and selection, and that is a big part of it, but I think the truth is people switch for the quality of the content. They're getting something they could never get before and at a much higher rate. If someone's telling me about a new show they're watching and I ask them where to watch it, it's almost a guarantee they're gonna point me to a streaming service. Now, I don't think standard television has nothing to offer, of course not. They have, and still can produce some incredible shows. And in some cases, I actually think the restrictions on TV can force shows to be more creative in finding unique ways to tell their story. Community, again, being a great example. But I feel that overall, streaming services are giving us more fresh, creative ideas and concepts, and from more people than ever before. There are tons of directors, actors, and screenwriters that are getting their chance on these platforms, and it's so much fun to watch their style and voice, as opposed to the 20th Chuck Lorre sitcom. Nothing against him, but it's just an example of how you get more variety on streaming platforms. I think we are currently in a golden age of shows, so let's enjoy it and support it, and appreciate how far television and streaming services have come. Isn't that right, Homelander?
Yeah, you bet, pal.